For more on the Trump transition, we're joined by Washington Post political columnist Philip Bump. Philip, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Let's talk about this controversial call, as it's being
Sure.
called. Is this a major breach of diplomatic protocol?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fairly huge one, right? I mean, for decades, we've seen partisans on both sides who've worked with administrations that have advanced a very particular policy on this very touchy issue of China and Taiwan's relationship that essentially was thrown out the window by this call by Donald Trump. He says he took a call. The Taiwanese say that Trump had reached out to them. It's, again, part of the issue is that we're never quite clear on what actually happened in situations like this. But this is something that, Donald Trump is new to government and he is new to these sorts of international relations. There's some question if he is trying to make his stamp on the relationship between China and the U.S. before he is sort of constrained by being part of the government. It's just not clear.
Philip, it's worth noting that this is coming during a week when Mr. Trump has made several calls that the New York Times say have left diplomats aghast, including calls to the president of the Philippines, Duterte, the prime minister of Pakistan, Nawaz Sharif. What does that signal about Donald Trump's foreign policy?
Well, again, this is the question, right? Is this Donald Trump sort of freelancing and acting off the cuff and not really understanding the ramifications of what he's doing? Or is this, as Jeet here of the New Republic pointed out yesterday, which I think is interesting, is this him trying to reset how America stations itself in the world before he is surrounded by, say, a Secretary of State nominee or by, members of the State Department? It's not clear which of those things is happening. It's certainly clear, though, that this is a break from where the United States has been, not only for the administration of Barack Obama, but for administrations going back for decades.
Meanwhile, we're waiting on the Secretary of State nominee, and we've heard additional names this week. David Petraeus joined the list with Rudy Giuliani, Mitt Romney, potentially Bob Corker. Where does that stand, do you think?
Well, Trump has pledged that he is going to have most of, if not all of his nominees out next week. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes. I think that one of the key questions for all of these cabinet positions, for all of these nominees, is the extent to which, yes, they'll be managing the day-to-day administration of each of these branches of the executive branch. But to what extent will they be able to actually guide what the administration is doing broadly, which is to say what President Trump is doing? I think that's the question. If it's a Mitt Romney, for example, who becomes Secretary of State, can Mitt Romney change Donald Trump's minds on things like what the United States has always done in relationship to China? It's not clear that he can.
So autonomy and influence are a huge question as it pertains to the entire cabinet. We know that the president-elect announced his pick for the Defense Secretary, General James Mattis, calling him the closest thing we have to General George Patton. Right. The armed services, of course, are supposed to be led by a civilian. How much is that a concern when it comes to General Mattis?
Well, it's already been Senator Gillibrand from New York has already cited that as the reason she opposes Mattis's nomination. I mean, obviously, the military still will be run by a civilian, which is the commander-in-chief, Donald Trump. But this is something that's been policy for a long period of time, in part to avoid the appearance of having a military-run government. That said, I think that Mattis is generally perceived by people who observe these sorts of things as a good pick, as someone who can do this job well and do it effectively. And we've already seen that Donald Trump has cited Mattis as having pushed back on him on the issue of torture, for example, which I think for people who are worried about Trump's relationship with his cabinet is a good sign.
Mattis may indeed be an olive branch in a weird way. Philip Bump, thanks for your time.